The dream of an 8-year-old boy named Jimmy is in danger after an alien entity has threatened his family and everyone else in this world. So it's up to Jimmy and his family and anyone else he finds along the way to help him take on this new threat. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass was developed and published by Casey Azumi, with it originally being released on August 7th, 2018 for PC. But it's now made its official console debut on February 5th, launching on the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Xbox One and Xbox Series consoles. With the console releases featuring some new levels, improved graphics, and a new difficulty mode. And we were able to get early access to the console release of this game for the purposes of this review. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass is a turn-based RPG with inspirations from Earthbound and early Final Fantasy games, and a story that was inspired by the psychological horror game Yumi Nikki. With the classic pixel art based design, the game takes these elements of inspiration to their fullest. You play as Jimmy, an 8-year-old boy who is living inside of his dream and is asked by his mother to go get some honey from the local bees. But upon taking on this small quest, he finds that things aren't as normal as usual, and the beehive has become attacked by some kind of pulsating mass that has turned the bees into zombies. And he runs into people who have been hired by a mysterious person to stop him, leading Jimmy needing to come face to face with his shortcomings in life as he works to save his dream world, with his family and some new companions from this dream world coming in to help throughout the adventure. Traveling across an overworld with different areas, all with their own themes that pull in from Jimmy's life and his relationships with his family. Exploring these different areas will bring up different enemies and NPCs that you can interact with the combat in this game being randomized for when it occurs. As you walk across the stages, you'll trigger random battles, with these battles being turn-based, with Jimmy and whoever else is in the party at the time, with Jimmy being able to empathize with different creatures he runs into on his journey, and he can take on those forms in battle, like a sunflower, a ghostly jack-o'-lantern, and a bear, each one having their own set of moves they can use in battle, and each form having their own bonus attribute that levels up with their level, as each form has their own XP that increases when you complete a battle in that form. And each form also has their own abilities they can use in the overworld as well, like the vampire that can walk through mirrors into alternate versions of the map. There's a lot of content in this game, and it reminded me perfectly of playing the old school RPGs I grew up with. Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass pulls a lot of inspiration with its designs and enemies from those games, with one of my favorite parts of the game being that it takes little jabs at other genres of gaming while you're playing, with there being a whole area based on classic 8-bit games where every object and NPC has these larger pixel structures. But it isn't just for the looks either, as it's incorporated pretty nicely into the story, with the area being Jimmy's subconscious for his relationship with his uncle Lars. With a lot of Jimmy's memories with Lars being around video games, it comes out in this section and further into the game about that relationship. There is some really deep story here with the different relationships that Jimmy has with his family, and how he views them and how he perceives they view him, and even the relationships of different characters within this dream world, with one of my favorites being Punch Tanaka, who continually shows up throughout the game as a minor antagonist. He was hired by the alien entity to stop Jimmy and tries to do so with his goons that show up throughout the game by his side. There's a lot of great humor in this game, and the scenes with Punch Tanaka especially I found most enjoyable, with the overall plot starting slow but turning into this really deep story as the game progresses. It got me heavily invested. It's probably the core part of the game that got me to see it through the end. The game features a lot of game mechanics that, personally, I just don't find very fun. Like the random encounters that'll stop the game's progress dead in its tracks in what feels like every 30 steps. And then the constant backtracking to repeat fighting enemies to level up so you can take on stronger bosses. These are the kind of game mechanics that I know people enjoy from these kind of games, but personally I find them more annoying and just time consuming. So it says something when I'm able to look at these mechanics as a minor inconvenience in order to experience the rest of what this game has to offer. There's a lot to this game, and my playthrough of it took about 40 hours. And during the beginning of the game, I was about ready to quit and throw in the towel. The story of the game really doesn't pick up until about 2 hours into it, or at least in my case. But once the story finally started going, it got me hooked, and the time started to fly right after that. I most definitely devolved into taking up the path of least resistance style of playing this game with its combat though. For my playthrough of this game, once I got the bear, that's about what I stuck with throughout the rest of this game, as it gives a +1 to your attack stat for every level, making it by far the most useful form for Jimmy to take when it comes to just ending the battles as quickly as possible, and allowing the game to continue. Because as with most RPG games, the one stat I cared about was bringing the enemy's health down to 0, and I focused on doing that as quickly as possible. Which was easy in the early parts of the game with you being able to just spam attacks on enemies, but eventually the battles get more complicated and you need to strategize to get through them even with random encounters. Which did add to the frustration of having to go back and grind for extra XP in order to be able to take on bosses that were nearly impossible for me to get past otherwise, spending a lot of time fighting those random encounters to level up my party. But again, It was a mild inconvenience for the ability to see where the story would progress. And man, did it hit in the heart sometimes. But I'll leave that part of it to be experienced by anybody that wants to play it. I will just say, this story got me hooked and I absolutely loved it. Especially mixed in with the different humor, characters, and dialogue throughout the game. There's a reason that I spent 40 hours playing through this game. And I can say, for most of that 40 hours, it was a ton of fun. Overall, I give Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass a 4 out of 5, with my biggest problem about the game just being a lot of the mechanics I find more annoying than fun. But if you're a fan of this kind of genre of RPGs, where you spend a lot of time going through random encounters to level up your party, you'll get a lot more enjoyment out of this than I did. And I get why that genre of games is so popular with a lot of people. I actually used to love playing games like this as a kid, but just not as much anymore. I can say, though, the story, the characters, and the other gameplay elements of Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass kept me locked in on this one. The battle mechanics and strategies you can build are a lot of fun once you get past the grinding to get to a level capable of taking on these bosses, with the bosses and enemies you come across being a really good mix to keep the game feeling fresh throughout. And the small homages to other game genres during the game are a ton of fun. Like an area where the game turns into a slice of life simulator with Jimmy attending school and classes, with the game taking a look like a visual novel game but with pixel art form. It's definitely the kind of game that's going on my list of games to recommend to people. But hey, let us know in the comments what you thought of the game. And if you like this review and want to see more, click that subscribe button. If you have suggestions for other games you think we should play, let us know as well. Until next time, this has been Brad with the Bickering Nerds.